Factsverse presents. He didn't speak to anyone for 27 years, and what the police found will shock you. But before we shock you, please shock us by clicking that like button, and also be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. After a bad day at work, many people fantasize about walking out one day and never returning. I have. Christopher Knight did too, but he took it a step further. He walked away from his job, his home, and his entire life and didn't speak to anybody for 27 years. In 1986, Christopher was a shy and intelligent 20-year-old. When he left home, he kept driving until he ran out of gas. He got out of his car and went into the forest, and for the next 3 decades, he lived alone in the forest and didn't speak to another soul. When he got out of his car, he didn't have a tent, a compass, or any type of survival gear. All he had were the clothes on his back. Living in the woods for all those years couldn't have been easy. The winters, I'm sure, were cold, and it's probably not uncommon for temperatures in that area to drop to 20 below. He also had no survival knowledge except what he learned from reading books. He didn't walk away from his life for art or religion. He didn't want to leave the modern world. He just wanted to walk off. He says he just can't explain his actions. He had no plan, he wasn't thinking, he just left. After being in the woods of Maine and Massachusetts, he foraged for fruits and berries as long as he could. It wasn't long before he realized that there wasn't much out there to eat, and he had no way of hunting or catching his own food. So he set up a camp near a boulder-strewn part of the woods and decided he would need to steal if he was going to survive. He turned his attention to 100 holiday cabins in the area. He never stole anything that was worth much. He says he only stole what he needed, like batteries, food, a camping stove, fuel for the stove, and clothing. In order to avoid getting caught, he would watch the people in the cabins to figure out their daily routine. Mostly he would steal from the cabins at night or when the weather was bad. He didn't want people to become suspicious if they saw him, so he would trim his beard regularly. He says over the 3 decades that he spent stealing, he committed at least 1,000 robberies. He says things he usually stole consisted of macaroni and cheese, Mountain Dew, propane tanks, and heavy-duty cloth to add to his shelter. He says over the years he stole about $395 in cash. He held on to it for emergencies and never spent $1 of it. When he was picked up by police, some of the money was moldy. He says he only stole the things that he needed to survive. To keep busy, he listened to talk radio. He played handheld video games, and he watched television on a miniature Panasonic black-and-white TV that he powered with a stolen car battery. Eventually, people caught on to what he was doing. They would leave food out for him, and they would leave notes asking him what he needed. All of those notes went ignored. Rather than accepting help, he stole the spare keys to the cabins and hid them around the properties so that he could easily get inside. To get to some of the cabins, he would take a canoe that he stole but would always return it afterwards. He often paddled to these cabins when it was dark and the edge of the lake was hidden. He always wore a watch so he knew how long he was in each cabin so he didn't stay too long. He also carried a bag of screwdrivers he used as a lock-picking kit. He says that he didn't like to steal, but when he was in the cabins, his blood pressure would rise, his adrenaline would spike, and it terrified him. He says he always wanted to get out as quickly as possible. When asked about feeling lonely, he said, "If you like solitude, you never feel lonely." After 27 years of isolation, he was arrested while stealing food from a summer camp. He was charged with burglary and was sentenced to 7 months in jail. By the time he was sentenced, he had already served his time. Upon his release, he met with a judge every week. He avoided alcohol, and he got a job with his brother working with scrap metal. After his arrest, he was dubbed the North Pond Hermit. He might be a strange man, but I can totally understand the thought of getting away from it all. There are times. Subscribe for more.